I'm Natalie Reynolds, 32, and I never thought my birthday gift would be divorce papers. Not from my husband Daniel, from my mother-in-law Barbara. That elegantly wrapped box with the Tiffany blue ribbon contained the end of my 5-year marriage, prepared with meticulous attention to detail, just like everything Barbara does. What she didn't prepare for was my response. The woman who orchestrated my humiliation never expected I'd return the favor at her lavish 60th birthday party. Before I dive into how I went from sobbing in my car to watching Barbara's perfect world crumble, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, hit that subscribe button, and stay for a revenge story that even I couldn't have planned better. I wasn't born into wealth like the Stewarts. My parents worked multiple jobs to keep our modest home in a decent school district. While other kids had summer camps and European vacations, I had library books and scholarship applications. Every semester of college came with the anxiety of financial aid forms and part-time jobs. But I graduated with honors, landed a position at a respected marketing firm, and built a career I was proud of. I worked for everything I had. Then I met Daniel Stewart at a charity auction my company was handling. He was there representing his family's law firm, tall, with warm brown eyes and a smile that made me forget my rehearsed networking pitch. Our conversation flowed effortlessly from the charity's cause to our favorite hiking trails. When he asked for my number, I almost thought he was collecting contacts for donations. When he called the next day to ask me to dinner, I realized I had misjudged. Our romance was like something from a movie I never thought I'd star in. Daniel was thoughtful, bringing me coffee just how I liked it before morning meetings, remembering small details about my friends, and listening, really listening, when I talked about my day. 6 months in, he took me to meet his parents. The Stewart family home was less a house and more an estate. Manicured gardens, marble floors, and staff who moved like silent shadows. Barbara Stewart greeted me with air kisses and a once-over that felt like a scanner searching for defects. "So you're in advertising?" she asked during dinner, making my career sound like a temporary hobby. "Marketing, actually. I'm a senior account manager," I corrected politely. "How nice. I'm sure it keeps you busy until you settle down properly." She smiled thinly before turning to Daniel. "Darling, have you told Natalie about the Simpson case your father's handling? Much more interesting than advertisements." That was my introduction to Barbara Stewart, poised, elegant, and capable of making you feel insignificant without ever raising her voice or saying anything directly insulting. Daniel's father Robert was different, quieter, with kind eyes that seemed to apologize for his wife's behavior. He asked genuine questions about my work and seemed impressed by my answers. But he never contradicted Barbara, not once in all the years I would know him. When Daniel proposed 6 months later, Barbara's response was telling. "Well, I suppose we can work with this," she said, examining my engagement ring, the vintage piece Daniel had chosen because I preferred its character to flashy new diamonds. "We'll need to start planning immediately. There's so much to do to make this appropriate." The wedding planning became Barbara's mission to remold me into a suitable Stewart bride. My ideas were systematically dismissed. The intimate garden ceremony I wanted became a 300-guest extravaganza at the country club. My preferred wildflower arrangements were replaced with imported roses. Even my dress, the one thing I thought would be mine to choose, became a battleground. "Darling, that silhouette does nothing for your figure," Barbara said at the boutique, summoning the attendant with a snap of her fingers. "Bring the Vera Wang instead. We need something to minimize her hips." Daniel tried to mediate initially. "Mom, let Natalie choose what makes her happy. I'm only thinking of the photographs, dear. These will be in our family albums forever." Barbara's tone left no room for argument, and Daniel's resistance crumbled like it always did. I walked down the aisle in Barbara's chosen dress, at Barbara's chosen venue, surrounded by Barbara's chosen guests, many of whom I'd never met. Daniel squeezed my hand at the altar and whispered, "You look beautiful. I'm the luckiest man alive." In that moment, I decided his love was worth all the Barbara battles to come. The early years of marriage came with constant reminders that I wasn't truly a Stewart. Barbara would drop by our home unannounced, rearranging our furniture while commenting that my decorating choices were unique and brave. She'd send housekeepers as gifts because Daniel is used to a certain standard, dear. Holiday dinners featured stories about Daniel's childhood and family traditions, with pointed reminders of inside jokes I couldn't possibly understand. Daniel saw only a fraction of it. Barbara was careful to save her most cutting remarks for when he stepped away. When I tried to discuss it, he'd sigh and say, "That's just mom being mom. She means well." Or worse, "You're being too sensitive, Nat. She's trying to help." I tried everything to win her approval. I volunteered for her charity committees, complimented her excessively, brought thoughtful gifts, and even adopted some of her mannerisms. Nothing worked. To Barbara, I remained the girl from the wrong side of town who had somehow trapped her son. My career continued advancing, which only made things worse. When I was promoted to marketing director, Barbara commented, "How modern that you still want to work. I suppose some women need that kind of fulfillment." The subtext was clear: real Stuart women didn't need careers, they needed charity boards and country club memberships. Robert occasionally threw me sympathetic glances or made small talk about my work, but he never defended me. Once, after Barbara left the room following a particularly cutting remark about my family's inability to contribute to our wedding, he patted my hand and said, "She's from a different generation, Natalie. Try not to take it personally." As if generational differences explained basic human cruelty. Despite it all, I believed Daniel and I had a solid marriage. We had our issues, his inability to stand up to his mother chief among them, but we laughed together, supported each other's goals, and were building what I thought was a happy life. We'd even started discussing children, though the thought of Barbara as a grandmother gave me nightmares. I was determined to make our marriage work, to prove Barbara wrong about me. I never imagined she was equally determined to prove herself right, and that she'd been planning my exit from the Stuart family since the day I entered it. My 32nd birthday fell on a Thursday. Daniel insisted we celebrate with his parents the following Saturday, claiming his mother had planned something special. I was skeptical but agreed. Barbara had never acknowledged my birthday beyond a generic card, sometimes with my name misspelled, so this sudden interest was suspicious. We arrived at the Stuart mansion at 7 sharp. Barbara greeted us in the marble foyer wearing a St. John knit suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. "Happy birthday, Natalie," she said, air-kissing both my cheeks. "You look rested." Her eyes lingered on the simple black dress I'd chosen, her slight grimace suggesting it failed her inspection. The dining room was impeccable as always, Waterford crystal, Limoges china, and an arrangement of white roses that must have cost hundreds. For place settings only, making it clear this was no surprise party. Just the Stuarts and their disappointing daughter-in-law. "I prepared your favorite, Daniel," Barbara announced as the housekeeper served the first course. "That salmon with dill sauce you loved as a boy." "Natalie's not fond of salmon, Mom," Daniel pointed out, though we both knew Barbara was well aware of this fact after 5 years. "Oh? I must have forgotten," Barbara replied with manufactured innocence. "Maria can prepare something else if it's too much trouble to eat what's served." "It's fine," I said quickly, not wanting to give her the satisfaction. "It looks delicious." Throughout dinner, Barbara dominated the conversation with stories about people I didn't know from the club and family memories that predated me. Robert occasionally tried to include me with questions about work, which Barbara swiftly redirected. "How is that little marketing job of yours, Natalie?" she asked during dessert, a chocolate torte I couldn't enjoy through my growing anxiety. "It's going very well," I replied. "We just landed the Lux Hospitality account last week." "Isn't that nice?" Barbara said dismissively before turning to Daniel. "Speaking of hospitality, I ran into Heather Blackwood at the club yesterday. Her father's firm is doing remarkable things. She asked after you, darling." Daniel shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. "That's nice. Such a lovely girl," Barbara continued. "Always thought you two were well matched." I knew Heather was Daniel's college girlfriend, the one Barbara had approved of. The daughter of one of Robert's law partners, raised in the same privileged circles as Daniel. Barbara mentioned her often enough that I'd developed an instinctive tension at the name. After dinner, we moved to the formal living room for the gift presentation, as Barbara called it. Robert looked increasingly uncomfortable, focusing intently on his whiskey glass. "We wanted to give you something truly meaningful this year," Barbara said, handing me a medium-sized box wrapped in signature Tiffany blue paper with a perfect white ribbon. The box was heavier than I expected. I carefully untied the ribbon and removed the paper, feeling the weight of the steward's expectant gazes. Inside was a polished wooden box with ornate silver hinges. I opened it to find legal documents neatly arranged with a Mont Blanc pen laid across them. Confused, I lifted the top page. The heading read Petition for Dissolution of Marriage. My hands began to shake as I flipped through the papers. Everything was filled out: Daniel's information, my information, division of assets. All that was missing was my signature. "What is this?" I whispered, though I knew exactly what it was. "It's time to end this charade, dear," Barbara said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "Daniel has already signed his portion. We thought it would be simplest this way." I looked at my husband in disbelief. He couldn't meet my eyes. "Daniel?" My voice cracked on his name. "I'm sorry, Nat," he finally said, staring at the carpet. "This isn't working." "It hasn't been for a while." "What isn't working?" I asked, my mind racing through our recent interactions, searching for signs I'd missed. "We were just talking about starting a family last week." Barbara laughed, a brittle, cutting sound. "Oh, dear. Daniel was merely being kind. He's known for months this was coming." "Is this true?" I asked him. His silence was answer enough. "There's something else you should know," Barbara continued, clearly enjoying her role. "Daniel and Heather have reconnected. They've realized what everyone else always knew: they belong together." The room tilted as her words hit me. "You're having an affair?" "It's not like that," Daniel finally spoke. "Heather and I ran into each other at Mom's charity gala 3 months ago. We started talking, and things just happened naturally." "Naturally," I repeated numbly. "While you were married to me." "The prenuptial agreement is quite clear," Barbara continued as if discussing the weather. "You'll vacate the condo within 30 days. We're being generous about the settlement considering the circumstances." "What circumstances?" I managed to ask. Barbara's smile turned cruel. "Daniel was kind enough not to mention your emotional instability. The outbursts, the jealousy, the career obsession that left no time for a proper family life. We have witnesses, of course. The household staff, family friends who've observed your behavior at events." "That's not true," I whispered, looking desperately at Daniel. "None of that is true." He wouldn't meet my eyes. "It's better this way, Nat. You'll see eventually." Robert finally spoke, his voice strained. "Perhaps we could discuss this another time. It is Natalie's birthday." "Precisely why today is appropriate, Robert," Barbara snapped. "A clean break to start her new year." "A kindness, really." I stood on shaky legs, clutching the divorce papers. "Did you orchestrate all of this? The reunion with Heather? This whole thing?" Barbara's smile was answer enough. "You've never been right for this family," she said quietly. "Daniel needs someone who understands our world. Someone who can be a proper Stewart wife, not someone constantly trying to prove herself with a little career." Tears burned in my eyes as I turned to Daniel. "And you're okay with this? With your mother planning our divorce and your next relationship?" He finally looked at me, regret and relief battling in his expression. "Heather makes sense for me, Nat. We want the same things. She understands the expectations that come with being part of this family." "Expectations I've failed to meet," I said flatly. "You've tried," he offered weakly. "It's just not who you are." I gathered my purse and the divorce papers, moving toward the door on autopilot. Don't worry about returning the box, Barbara called after me. Consider it a parting gift. As I reached the foyer, I heard her final cutting remark, I'm sure you'll land on your feet. Your kind always does, back where you belong. I made it to my car before the sobs overtook me, the elegant wooden box containing the end of my marriage clutched against my chest. The next weeks passed in a blur of grief and practical nightmares. I moved in with my best friend Jenna, sleeping on her pull-out couch while scrambling to find a new place to live. The divorce papers had included a 30-day notice to vacate our condo, which I discovered was solely in Daniel's name, despite our having chosen it together. You can stay here as long as you need, Jenna insisted, helping me unpack the few suitcases of belongings I'd managed to grab. This is absolutely insane, Nat. Who ambushes someone with divorce papers as a birthday gift? Barbara Stewart, that's who, I said, trying to laugh through tears. Always going for maximum dramatic effect. The worst blow came 3 days after the birthday dinner. I tried to withdraw money to put down a deposit on a small apartment and discovered our joint account had been emptied. All $43,000, including my last 2 paychecks, gone. He cleaned it out the day before, the sympathetic bank manager explained. Since it was a joint account, there's nothing we can do. I called Daniel, something I'd managed to avoid until then. You took all our money, I said when he answered, not bothering with pleasantries. My lawyer advised securing assets before presenting the divorce, he replied, his voice formal and distant. You'll receive a fair settlement once the papers are signed. I need to pay rent, Daniel. I need to eat. His sigh was irritated, as though I was being unreasonable. Fine. I'll have an advance sent to you. But we need those papers signed, Nat, don't drag this out. The advance arrived the next day, $5,000 with a note from Daniel's attorney stating this would be deducted from my final settlement. Like an allowance for a difficult child. That weekend, the social media updates began. First, a photo of Daniel at a charity event with Heather on his arm, her hand possessively on his chest, diamond tennis bracelet glinting. Then Barbara's pointed post. So wonderful having Heather back in our lives where she belongs. #family reunited. Comments flooded in from their social circle, many of whom had been at our wedding, expressing delight at seeing Daniel with the right person at last. Some didn't even attempt to hide their tags, ensuring I would see their approval of my replacement. The divorce proceedings moved at lightning speed, the Stewart family connections greasing every legal wheel. While I scrambled to find an attorney I could afford, they had a team of lawyers from Robert's firm preparing motions and filings. My lawyer, a kind woman named Samantha who took my case at a reduced rate, looked grim during our first meeting. They're playing hardball, she warned, reviewing their initial settlement offer. The prenup is tight, but we can argue you signed under duress or without proper counsel. It won't get you half, but we might secure a more equitable division. I don't care about their money, I said, exhausted. I just want what's fair. What I contributed. That's exactly what they're counting on, Samantha replied. They want you broken and willing to take scraps to make this go away. Every day brought new humiliations. Barbara accidentally copied me on an email to her interior designer about redecorating that dreadful condo now that Daniel's unfortunate mistake is being rectified. Mutual friends gradually stopped returning my calls, unwilling to risk the steward's social disapproval. Even my mother received a condescending note from Barbara expressing sympathy for Natalie's difficulties adjusting to the divorce and suggesting she might help her daughter seek appropriate counseling. The worst moment came when I was served with additional papers claiming I had removed valuable items from the condo, including jewelry Barbara had loaned me that was family property. The pieces in question had been gifts from Daniel, but proving that without receipts was impossible. They're trying to run up your legal fees, Samantha explained. Each motion requires a response, which means more billable hours. It's a common tactic when one party has significantly more resources. 2 months after my birthday, I hit rock bottom. I was living in a studio apartment I could barely afford, working constantly to cover legal fees, and crying myself to sleep most nights. The settlement offer on the table would barely cover my existing debts, much less help me rebuild. Daniel and Heather were newly engaged, their beaming faces featured in the society pages. Barbara had successfully removed me from their perfect family narrative, replacing me with the woman she had always wanted for her son. That night, curled on my twin bed, I scrolled through photos of my former life until I reached my breaking point. I hurled my phone across the room, watching it crack against the wall, a fitting metaphor for my life. Jenna found me like that, sitting on the floor surrounded by tissues. She'd been checking on me daily, bringing food I couldn't taste and offering comfort I couldn't feel. "This has to stop, Nat," she said firmly, sitting beside me. "You can't keep letting them destroy you." "They already have," I whispered. "Bullshit." Jenna's voice was uncharacteristically harsh. "The only person who can destroy Natalie Reynolds is Natalie Reynolds. Are you really going to let that Botoxed barracuda win?" Something in her words penetrated the fog of my depression. "What choice do I have?" "You have every choice. You're smart, talented, and stronger than you realize. Barbara orchestrated this because she was threatened by you, by your independence and success. By the fact that Daniel loved someone she couldn't control. Fat lot of good that did me. He chose her in the end. He chose the path of least resistance, which tells you everything about his character," Jenna countered. "But this isn't about Daniel. It's about you deciding who you want to be, the woman who was destroyed by the Stewarts, or the woman who survived them and thrived." Her words settled into my consciousness, planting a seed that would grow into determination. I wiped my tears and looked at my oldest friend. "I don't know how to come back from this," I admitted. "One step at a time," Jenna said, squeezing my hand. "Starting with remembering who you were before you met them." That night marked the turning point. I didn't know it yet, but as I finally fell into exhausted sleep, the phase of my life as a victim was ending. What came next would surprise everyone, especially Barbara Stewart. The next morning, I woke with clarity I hadn't felt in months. I showered, put on my best work outfit, and called Samantha. "I want to counter their offer," I said when she answered. "Not with a number, with terms. I'll sign quickly and quietly, but I want my personal items returned without dispute, 3 months' salary as severance, and an NDA that works both ways. They don't talk about me, I don't talk about them." "That's actually smart," Samantha said, sounding surprised by my sudden decisiveness. "The Stewarts care about their reputation more than money. I'll draft it today." With the divorce battle contained, I turned my focus to rebuilding. I threw myself into work, arriving early and staying late. My boss Grant noticed. "Everything okay, Natalie?" he asked after finding me still at my desk at 9 p.m. for the third night that week. "Just focused," I replied, not looking up from my presentation. "This wouldn't have anything to do with your personal situation, would it?" he asked carefully. I finally met his eyes. "Does it matter if it does?" "Only if it's affecting your health. The work itself is exceptional. That Lux Hospitality campaign concept was brilliant." "Thank you. I'm fine. Just realigning my priorities." Grant studied me for a moment. "We have a senior director position opening next month. Williams is retiring. I wasn't going to mention it yet, but you should apply. Your work deserves recognition." The opportunity was exactly what I needed, a chance to advance, to regain financial stability, and to remember my value outside of my failed marriage. I prepared obsessively for the interview, creating a comprehensive marketing strategy for the department's future. When I presented it to the executive team, even the skeptical CFO was nodding along. I got the job, along with a substantial salary increase and a corner office. The promotion announcement went out company-wide, and congratulations poured in, including from my new team members who had previously reported to Williams. Among them was Lisa Chan, who managed our luxury brand accounts. During our first one-on-one meeting, she mentioned something that caught my attention. "We're pitching Preston Hotels next week," she said. "It's a tough one because Stewart Events has handled their marketing for years. Barbara Stewart has personal connections with the ownership. I managed to keep my expression neutral despite the jolt of hearing that name. Stewart Events? Tell me more about them. High-end event planning and marketing for luxury brands. Very exclusive, very connected. Barbara Stewart runs it. She's married to Robert Stewart of Stewart and Palmer Law. They basically own this city's social scene. I knew Barbara had some sort of event planning business, but Daniel had always been vague about it. Now I understood why. It directly competed with firms like ours. What's our angle for the pitch? I asked. Fresh perspective, digital innovation. Stewart Events excels at traditional luxury marketing but hasn't kept pace with changing demographics. Preston needs to attract younger affluent clients without alienating their established base. For the first time in months, I felt a genuine smile form. Let's win this one, Lisa. We did. Our pitch to Preston hotels was comprehensive, innovative, and precisely targeted to their evolving needs. When we were awarded the account, Lisa informed me that Stewart Events had been handling it for over a decade. Apparently Mrs. Stewart is furious, she confided. My contact at Preston said she's demanding they reconsider. Market competition is healthy, I replied mildly, savoring the first taste of something I hadn't allowed myself to feel, satisfaction. As I settled into my new role, I began hearing more about Barbara through industry channels. Stewart Events specialized in high society functions, charity galas, corporate milestones, and elite private celebrations. Their client list included names I recognized from Barbara's dinner parties and social media, the upper echelon of city society. Through Lisa, I learned that Barbara had been planning her 60th birthday celebration for months, an extravagant gala at the Hamilton Hotel's Grand Ballroom, with a guest list including the mayor, several state representatives, and the city's wealthiest families. It was being billed as the social event of the season, with Barbara leveraging it to showcase her company's capabilities to potential clients. The timing aligned perfectly with a curious email I'd received from my divorce attorney. The final settlement had been processed, all terms met except one. Several items of disputed ownership were still being held by the Stewarts, including my grandmother's pearl earrings that Barbara had insisted were on loan from the Stewart collection. They're dragging their feet on returning these items, Samantha explained. I can file another motion, but it will take time and money. Don't bother, I decided. Some things aren't worth fighting for. But the situation got me thinking about what else Barbara might be hiding, what other corners she might be cutting in her perfect life. I remembered comments she'd made during family dinners about creative accounting and necessary arrangements with vendors. My new position gave me access to industry information I hadn't had before. During a marketing conference, I met Jason Alvarez, the CFO of Meridian Hotels, another Stewart Events client. Reynolds, he said when I introduced myself. Weren't you married to Robert Stewart's son? Briefly, I acknowledged. Small world. Indeed. How's Barbara these days? Still running her little empire with an iron fist? Something in his tone suggested an opening. As far as I know. We don't exactly keep in touch. Jason laughed. I can imagine. Between us, we're reviewing our relationship with Stewart Events. Some accounting discrepancies have come to light. Nothing proven, but concerning. What kind of discrepancies? I asked casually. Vendor markups beyond industry standards. Possible double billing. Services charged but not delivered. He shrugged. The usual high society games, but our new financial team is less willing to overlook them. That conversation led to others. At industry events, client meetings, and professional mixers, I began hearing similar stories. Barbara's business practices were raising eyebrows across the luxury hospitality sector. Not enough for anyone to take action, her social connections protected her, but enough to create a pattern. I wasn't actively seeking revenge. I told myself I was simply gathering information, protecting my company from a competitor known for questionable practices. But each new detail felt like a piece of ammunition being loaded into a gun I wasn't yet sure I would fire. The tipping point came through an unexpected source. Daniel's cousin Megan reached out via email, asking to meet for coffee. We'd always gotten along well. She was one of the few Stewart relatives who had treated me as an equal from the beginning. "I heard about the divorce," she said once we were seated with our drinks. "I wanted to check on you, but it took me a while to work up the courage to reach out." "I appreciate that," I said sincerely. "It's been educational." Megan laughed. "That's one way to put it. For what it's worth, I think the way they handled things was appalling. Especially Aunt Barbara." "Your aunt has always had a flair for the dramatic," I said carefully. "She's a manipulative witch who's controlled this family for decades," Megan corrected bluntly. "What she did to you, orchestrating Daniel's affair, that birthday ambush, it's just her latest masterpiece." Her candor was refreshing after months of carefully measured responses from mutual friends. "You seem well informed. Daniel's sister Lauren told me everything. She feels terrible about it but won't cross her mother publicly. Classic Stewart behavior. Disapprove privately, conform publicly." Over the next hour, Megan shared family insights I'd never been privy to, including Barbara's systematic removal of anyone who threatened her control. Previous girlfriends Daniel's father had deemed unsuitable. Business partners who questioned her methods. Even family members who defied her vision of Stewart perfection. "Did you know she's using the family foundation to fund her birthday gala?" Megan asked. "Classifying it as a donor recognition event to write off the entire thing. Is that legal?" "Technically no, but Uncle Robert sits on the foundation board and signs whatever she puts in front of him. It's the same with her business, the questionable billing practices, the vendor kickbacks. He looks the other way because confronting her isn't worth the private hell she'd make his life." As our meeting ended, Megan hesitated before asking, "Are you going?" "Going where?" "To Barbara's birthday gala. The invitations went out last week. I assumed you wouldn't be on the list, but I wondered if you'd heard about it." "Why would I be invited to celebrate the woman who orchestrated my divorce?" Megan smiled wryly. "You wouldn't. But wouldn't it be something if you showed up anyway?" The idea took root instantly, walking into Barbara's carefully orchestrated celebration, seeing her perfect composure crack. But emotional satisfaction wasn't enough. If I was going to crash Barbara Stewart's party, I needed to make it count. "Do you have access to the foundation's financial records?" I asked Megan. She raised an eyebrow. "I could. My father's on the board too." "Why?" "Just curious about how thoroughly Barbara has been mixing business with pleasure." Megan studied me for a moment before nodding slowly. "I'll see what I can find." "Whatever you're thinking. I want in." Over the next several weeks, Megan became my unexpected ally, providing documents that painted a clear picture of Barbara's business practices. The foundation funds being misappropriated. The systematic overbilling of clients. The tax discrepancies where personal expenses were classified as business deductions. Meanwhile, I continued building my professional reputation. Our agency landed 2 more accounts previously held by Stewart Events. Industry publications featured our innovative campaigns. I was invited to speak at conferences Barbara had once dominated. I never mentioned my connection to the Stewarts in professional settings, but I knew Barbara was aware of my success. Lisa reported that she had attempted to poach our Preston Hotel's account by offering a substantial discount, only to be politely declined. As Barbara's birthday gala approached, I finalized my plan. It wasn't about public humiliation or emotional vindication, though those would be satisfying side effects. It was about justice of a sort, about consequences for someone who had spent a lifetime believing she was above them. I selected my outfit carefully, a deep red dress that projected confidence without flashiness, elegant jewelry that didn't scream for attention, subtle makeup that highlighted my features without transforming them. I wasn't attending as a Stewart or as Daniel's ex-wife, but as Natalie Reynolds, a woman who had rebuilt herself from the ashes Barbara had tried to leave her in. The night before the gala, Jenna helped me prepare. Are you sure about this? She asked as I finalized my appearance. You've worked so hard to move forward. Is it worth reopening old wounds? I met my own eyes in the mirror, seeing not the devastated woman from months ago but someone stronger, more focused. This isn't about the past. It's about making sure Barbara Stewart can't do to anyone else what she did to me. As I prepared for bed, my phone chimed with a text from Megan. Everything's ready. See you tomorrow. The queen is about to fall. I slept better that night than I had in months, dreaming not of revenge but of justice, and of the expression on Barbara Stewart's face when she realized she had created not a victim, but an adversary. The Hamilton Hotel's grand ballroom had been transformed into Barbara Stewart's vision of elegance, crystal chandeliers lowered to create intimate lighting, tables adorned with towering arrangements of white orchids and roses, ice sculptures representing significant moments in her life. A string quartet played softly in the corner while white-gloved servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. I arrived deliberately late, giving the party time to reach full swing. The security guard checked his list as I approached. Natalie Reynolds, I said confidently. Senior Director at Apex Marketing. He scanned the guest list, frowning slightly. I don't see your name, Ms. Reynolds. I smiled. That's strange. I'm representing Preston Hotels, we're one of the event sponsors. This wasn't entirely untrue. Preston had contributed to the event as part of their community relations program. The guard hesitated, then nodded toward the ballroom. Go ahead, Ms. Reynolds. Enjoy your evening. Inside, the room buzzed with the city's elite, politicians mingling with business leaders, socialites comparing jewelry, old money conversing with new. I accepted a glass of champagne from a passing server and scanned the crowd, locating Barbara at the center of an admiring circle. She wore a custom gown that probably cost more than my car, diamonds glittering at her throat and ears. I spotted Daniel and Heather near the bar, his hand possessively on her lower back as she laughed too loudly at something he said. Robert stood awkwardly nearby, already looking like he wanted to escape. Megan caught my eye from across the room and gave an almost imperceptible nod. Taking a deep breath, I moved through the crowd toward Barbara, timing my approach to coincide with a brief lull in her conversation circle. Barbara, I said warmly, extending my hand. Happy birthday. The event is spectacular, exactly what everyone would expect from Stewart events. Her face froze in shocked recognition, the champagne glass in her hand tilting dangerously before she recovered. Natalie, she managed, voice tight. This is unexpected. I don't recall sending you an invitation. I'm here representing Preston Hotels, I replied smoothly. They're one of your sponsors tonight, I believe? Thomas Preston sends his regards. He would have attended himself, but he's at our strategy retreat in Aspen. The implication that I was now close with one of her important clients wasn't lost on Barbara or the people surrounding her, who watched our exchange with poorly disguised interest. How nice, Barbara said, her smile brittle. If you'll excuse me, I should greet the mayor. As she attempted to retreat, I matched her step. Actually, I've been hoping to congratulate you on your philanthropy work. The Stewart Foundation has quite a reputation in this city. Her eyes narrowed at the mention of the foundation. Thank you. We're very proud of our contributions. As you should be. Such generosity, extending even to personal celebrations. I gestured around the ballroom. I understand this entire event is being classified as a donor recognition function? Very creative accounting. The color drained from Barbara's face. I don't know what you're implying, but this is hardly the venue for business discussions. Now if you'll excuse me. Of course, I agreed pleasantly. I should mingle. So many familiar faces here, including several Apex marketing clients. Small world, isn't it? I moved away before she could respond, feeling her eyes burning into my back as I gracefully navigated through the crowd. Over the next hour, I implemented my plan methodically. I approached key industry figures, people whose business Barbara relied on, and engaged them in warm conversation, casually mentioning inconsistencies I'd noticed in Stewart Events' billing practices. "It's probably nothing," I would say with concerned professionalism. But as a marketing director myself, I'd want to know if my clients were noticing such things. I watched Barbara from across the room, noting how she kept glancing in my direction while trying to maintain her hostess composure. When she disappeared briefly, Megan approached me. "She's in panic mode," Megan whispered. "She just called her financial manager from the ladies' room. Your name came up several times, none of it complimentary." "Perfect timing," I replied. "Is everything set for the toast?" "All ready. Robert's making the introduction in about 20 minutes. I circulated further, finding myself face to face with Daniel near the dessert table. He froze when he saw me, uncertainty replacing his initial shock. "Natalie," he said finally. "What are you doing here?" "Working," I replied simply. "Your mother's event has quite the industry attendance." He shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I know things ended badly between us." "Do you?" I asked, my voice even. "Which part was bad, Daniel? The affair your mother arranged? The ambush divorce on my birthday? Or the way you emptied our joint account before any of it?" He had the grace to look ashamed. "I never meant to hurt you. Things just happened." "Things don't just happen, Daniel. People make choices. You made yours." I looked past him to where Heather was watching us anxiously. "I hope she understands what she's marrying into." Before he could respond, Robert clinked a glass, calling for attention. The crowd quieted as he began a clearly rehearsed speech about his extraordinary wife and her contributions to their family and community. Barbara took her place beside him, radiating practiced humility as he praised her business acumen, philanthropic spirit, and dedication to perfection. I positioned myself where she couldn't avoid seeing me, raising my champagne glass in silent acknowledgement when her eyes found mine. "And now," Robert concluded, "a toast to Barbara Stewart on her 60th birthday. May the coming years bring you all the joy and success you deserve." Glasses raised throughout the room as Barbara basked in the attention. When the applause subsided, I stepped forward. "If I might add a small token of appreciation," I said, my voice carrying clearly. Barbara's smile faltered as I approached, carrying a small, elegantly wrapped box, Tiffany blue with a white ribbon, an exact match to the one she had given me on my birthday. A murmur went through the crowd. Most knew me only as a marketing executive, but a few recognized me as Daniel's ex-wife. Barbara's expression shifted rapidly between panic and fury as she realized she couldn't refuse the gift without creating a scene. "How thoughtful," she managed, accepting the box with visibly trembling hands. "I believe in returning kindness for kindness," I said, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "You once gave me a gift that changed my life. I wanted to do the same for you." Barbara hesitated before slowly untying the ribbon. Inside the box was a folder containing copies of documents Megan had provided, foundation financial records showing misappropriation of funds, tax filings with clear discrepancies, client invoices revealing systematic overbilling. As she registered what she was seeing, her face lost all color. Her eyes shot to mine in horrified understanding. "There's more," I said quietly, "just for her. The originals have been shared with the relevant authorities and your most significant clients. Check your phone." On cue, Barbara's phone chimed with an incoming message, the mass email I had scheduled to send at precisely this moment to her client list, containing proof of her fraudulent business practices. "You wouldn't," she whispered. "I already have," I replied calmly, raising my voice to address the curious onlookers. "Mrs. Stewart has been a remarkable example of how appearances can be deceiving. Her attention to detail, particularly in financial matters, is truly exceptional." Barbara clutched the documents, her carefully constructed facade crumbling as whispers began spreading through the room. Several guests were already checking their phones, having received my email. "What have you done?" she hissed. "Nothing compared to what you did," I answered softly. "The difference is that your actions were personal. Mine are simply business." Daniel pushed through the crowd, his expression confused as he took in his mother's distress. "Mom? What's going on?" Before she could answer, Robert appeared at her side, his face grave as he looked at the documents in her hands. "Barbara? What are these?" "Nothing," she snapped, trying to close the folder. "A misunderstanding." "It doesn't look like nothing," Robert said, taking the papers from her unresisting fingers. As he scanned them, his expression hardened. "We need to talk. Now." Barbara looked wildly around the room, seeing the growing discomfort of her guests, many now huddled in whispered conversations. Heather stood awkwardly at the edge of the scene, uncertainty clear on her face as she watched Daniel rush to his mother's side. "You've ruined everything," Barbara said to me, her voice breaking. "No," I corrected gently. "I simply revealed what was already there. You built your perfect world on lies and manipulation. All I did was turn on the lights." I stepped back, watching as Robert firmly guided Barbara toward a side door, her birthday celebration dissolving into confusion behind them. Daniel hesitated, torn between following his parents and managing the increasingly uncomfortable guests. Megan appeared at my elbow. "Perfect execution," she murmured. "What now?" "Now we leave," I replied, setting down my champagne glass. "The rest will take care of itself." As I walked toward the exit, I passed Heather, who was staring after Daniel with growing realization on her face. Our eyes met briefly, and I saw in hers what I had felt months ago, the dawning understanding that she had attached herself to a family built on facades. Outside, the night air felt clean and refreshing after the tension of the ballroom. I took a deep breath, feeling not triumph but a profound sense of closure. Barbara Stewart had orchestrated my humiliation because I threatened her perfect image. Now, that image was shattered by her own actions, exposed to the light of truth. The car Megan had arranged pulled up to the curb. As I slid into the back seat, I allowed myself one last look at the Hamilton Hotel, its elegant facade now seeming as superficial as the woman whose celebration was imploding inside. "Where to?" the driver asked. "Home," I replied simply. And for the first time since my world had collapsed, I truly felt I was heading there. The morning after Barbara's birthday gala, my phone exploded with notifications. Industry colleagues, former mutual friends, even acquaintances I barely remembered, all reaching out with some variation of "Did you hear what happened?" The story had spread like wildfire through the city's social circles. Barbara Stewart, socialite and business maven, under investigation for financial improprieties. The shocking scene at her birthday celebration. The hasty departure of the guest of honor as confused attendees were left to speculate. I declined to comment to anyone, maintaining professional distance while watching the situation unfold through social media and industry channels. Lisa arrived at my office with coffee and wide eyes. "The Stewart Events clients are jumping ship like it's the Titanic," she reported, settling into the chair across from my desk. "Preston Hotels already called to confirm we're taking over all their upcoming events. 3 others have requested emergency meetings." "Schedule them," I replied calmly. "But let's be careful not to appear opportunistic. This is about providing stability to clients in a difficult situation, not capitalizing on someone else's downfall." Lisa studied me curiously. "You're taking this very professionally." "It is professional," I said simply. Barbara Stewart made business decisions that had consequences. The personal history between us is irrelevant. But of course, it wasn't entirely irrelevant. That afternoon, I received a text from an unknown number that turned out to be Daniel. "We need to talk," it read. "Please. It's important." I debated ignoring it, but curiosity won out. I agreed to meet him at a quiet coffee shop downtown after work. He was already there when I arrived, looking disheveled in a way the perfectly groomed Daniel Stewart never had before. His hair needed cutting, his expensive shirt was wrinkled, and the shadows under his eyes suggested he hadn't been sleeping well. "Thank you for coming," he said as I sat across from him. "I wasn't sure you would." "What do you want, Daniel?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I once found endearing. Did you do it? Expose my mother's activities? I provided information to the appropriate parties, I answered carefully. Your mother's actions did the rest. Do you know what's happening? The foundation is being audited. Stewart Events has lost half its clients. The country club is reviewing her membership. My father is talking about separation. His voice cracked slightly. Everything's falling apart. Actions have consequences, I said, feeling strangely detached from his distress. Your mother spent years building a life on manipulation and financial deception. That was always going to end eventually. Daniel leaned forward, his expression earnest. I know I hurt you, Nat. What happened between us, the way it ended, it was wrong. I see that now. Now that your mother's perfect plan has backfired? I asked mildly. He flinched. I made my own choices. I know that. But Mom, she has a way of making you see things her way. Of making you believe what's wrong is actually right. I'm familiar with the technique. Heather and I. He hesitated. Things aren't good. She's having second thoughts about the engagement. Says she didn't sign up for a family scandal. How inconvenient for you. That's not, he stopped, reconsidering. I deserved that. But I want you to know, I've been thinking a lot about us. About what I threw away. We had something real, not something I didn't appreciate until it was gone. I studied him, this man I had once loved enough to fight through years of his mother's hostility. In his face, I could still see traces of the Daniel who had made me laugh, who had supported my career ambitions, who had once seemed like my partner in building a life together. But I could also see the man who had allowed his mother to orchestrate my humiliation, who had signed divorce papers before I even knew our marriage was in trouble, who had emptied our joint account and left me scrambling to rebuild. What exactly are you saying, Daniel? He reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of touching mine. I miss you. I made a terrible mistake. Maybe, when things settle down, we could try again? Start fresh? The question hung between us, and I was surprised to feel nothing. No anger, no vindication, not even satisfaction at his regret. Just a calm certainty that this chapter of my life was closed. No, Daniel, I said gently. We can't go back. And I wouldn't want to even if we could. Because you hate me now, he said, shoulders slumping. Because I don't love you anymore, I corrected. And that's actually better for both of us. I stood to leave, but hesitated. For what it's worth, I hope you find your way through this. Maybe without your mother's influence, you'll figure out what you actually want from life. His surprised expression was the last image I had of Daniel Stewart, sitting alone at a coffee shop table as I walked away without looking back. In the weeks that followed, the Stewart family drama continued unfolding across social media and local news. Barbara's company was officially under investigation by the state attorney general's office. Robert Stewart announced a leave of absence from his law firm, citing personal reasons. The foundation's board of directors issued a statement distancing themselves from Barbara's actions and promising full cooperation with authorities. Heather officially ended her engagement to Daniel, announcing it with a carefully worded social media post about taking time for self-discovery. Barbara's carefully curated Instagram account went dormant after a final defiant post claiming she was the victim of professional jealousy and personal vendettas. Megan kept me updated on family developments, reporting that Robert had moved out of the mansion and was considering divorce. Uncle Robert actually seems relieved, she told me over lunch. Like he's breathing freely for the first time in decades. And Barbara? I couldn't help asking. Spiraling, Megan said bluntly. She's convinced herself she's the victim in all this. Can't understand why her friends are suddenly unavailable for lunch. Keeps talking about weathering the storm and emerging stronger, as if this is just a temporary setback. And Daniel? Megan's expression softened slightly. Struggling. But maybe in a good way? He's in therapy, if you can believe it. Says he's trying to understand why he let his mother control his life for so long. I nodded, surprised to find I genuinely hoped he would find his way. Meanwhile, my own career continued advancing. Our agency had acquired several former Stewart Events clients, and my department was expanding to handle the new business. Grant called me into his office one afternoon with unexpected news. Stewart Events is for sale, he said without preamble. Barbara Stewart is facing legal challenges and looking to liquidate assets quickly. The asking price is well below market value. I stared at him, processing the implications. Are you suggesting we acquire it? I'm suggesting you acquire it, Grant clarified. As a subsidiary under your direction. The brand still has value despite recent events. With the right leadership and ethical overhaul, it could be rehabilitated. The irony was almost too perfect. Natalie Reynolds, once deemed unworthy of the Stewart name, now positioned to own a piece of the Stewart empire. I'll need to think about it, I told Grant, though in my heart I already knew my answer. 2 days later, I signed the preliminary acquisition paperwork. Stewart Events would become Reynolds' Signature Events, maintaining the high-end clientele while operating with transparency and integrity. Barbara's creation would continue, but transformed by the woman she had tried to destroy. The final piece of closure came unexpectedly. I arrived home one evening to find a small package waiting at my door, a velvet jewelry box with no note or return address. Inside were my grandmother's pearl earrings, the ones Barbara had claimed were on loan from the Stewart collection. I never learned who sent them. Robert, trying to make amends? Daniel, returning a piece of our past? Megan, having found them among family possessions? It didn't matter. Their return symbolized the reclaiming of something I had thought lost forever, not just the earrings, but my sense of self-worth. That night, I called Jenna to share the news about the business acquisition. So you now own Barbara Stewart's company, she marveled. That has to feel like the ultimate victory lap. I considered this as I looked around my new apartment, smaller than the condo I'd shared with Daniel, but truly mine, decorated according to my taste with no one's approval needed. It's not about victory, I said finally. It's about rebuilding something better from the ruins. That's the real satisfaction. Still, Jenna insisted, you have to admit there's a certain poetic justice to how everything turned out. I smiled, touching the pearl earrings now sitting on my dresser. I suppose there is. But the best part isn't watching Barbara's fall from grace or acquiring her company. It's realizing that I built a life that's actually mine, not a reaction to hers, not an attempt to prove my worth to the Stewarts, just authentically mine. To authentic lives, Jenna toasted through the phone. And unexpected journeys, I added, looking toward the future with hope rather than resentment. 1 year after Barbara Stewart's disastrous birthday celebration, I sat in my corner office reviewing quarterly projections for Reynolds' Signature Events. The transition had been challenging but ultimately successful. We'd retained most of Stewart Events' prestigious clients while implementing transparent business practices and rebuilding the company's reputation. My assistant knocked on the door. Mr. Stewart is here to see you. For a moment, my heart skipped. Daniel. Before I registered the Mr. It was Robert, not his son. Send him in, I said, composing myself. Robert Stewart looked different from the man I'd known during my marriage, thinner, but somehow more substantial. The perpetual tension that had characterized his expression had eased, replaced by a calm dignity I'd never seen in him before. Natalie, he greeted me, accepting my gesture toward the visitor's chair. Thank you for seeing me without an appointment. Of course. What can I do for you, Robert? He placed his hands carefully on his knees, a man choosing his words with deliberation. I owe you an apology. Several, in fact. I waited, giving him space to continue. I should have intervened years ago, with Barbara's treatment of you, with the divorce, with all of it. My silence made me complicit. You weren't the architect of what happened, I said carefully. No, but I was the enabler. He met my eyes directly. I've spent 40 years enabling Barbara's worst impulses because confrontation seemed more difficult than acquiescence. That's not an excuse, just a shameful acknowledgement. His candor surprised me. What changed? Everything, he said simply. The investigations, the social fallout, the legal proceedings, they forced me to see what I'd been ignoring. I've spent the past year in therapy, trying to understand how I became the man who would stand by while his wife orchestrated our son's divorce as a birthday gift to his wife. I winced at the memory but appreciated his unflinching acknowledgement. Barbara and I are legally separated, he continued. The divorce will be finalized next month. It's been educational, seeing how she operates when her tactics are turned against her. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. 40 years was a lifetime to unravel, regardless of the circumstances. Don't be. It's long overdue. He hesitated. Have you spoken with Daniel recently? I shook my head. Not since last year. He reached out after the gala, but we don't have anything left to say to each other. Robert nodded. He's struggling to find his footing. The engagement to Heather ended badly. His position at the firm is complicated by my leave of absence and Barbara's legal issues. But he's doing the work, therapy, reconnecting with friends outside his mother's social circle, even some volunteer teaching at the law school. I'm glad, I said sincerely. I hope he finds his way. As do I. Robert straightened in his chair. I didn't come to discuss Daniel, though. I came to thank you. Thank me? I echoed, confused. What you did at Barbara's birthday, exposing her business practices, it wasn't just justice for how she treated you. It forced a reckoning that was decades overdue. For the family, for the foundation, for me personally. He smiled sadly. Sometimes demolition is necessary before rebuilding can begin. His words resonated with my own journey over the past year. I understand that better than most. You've done remarkable things with the company, he observed, glancing around my office. Barbara could never have imagined it would thrive without her unique approach to business. Honesty and transparency can be surprisingly effective business strategies, I replied dryly. Robert laughed, a genuine sound I had rarely heard from him. Indeed. He stood to leave, then hesitated. One more thing. Barbara's legal troubles are ongoing. She's rejected multiple plea deals, convinced she can charm her way out of consequences as she always has. Some patterns are hard to break, I observed. Indeed, he repeated. But for those of us willing to do the work, change is possible. He extended his hand. Thank you for seeing me, Natalie. I wish you continued success, professional and personal. As I shook his hand, I realized the encounter had provided a form of closure I hadn't known I needed. Not just with Robert, but with the entire Stewart family chapter of my life. After he left, I found myself reflecting on the journey of the past 18 months. From the devastation of that birthday dinner to rebuilding my life piece by piece, from the rock bottom of depression to the professional success I now enjoyed. My phone chimed with a text from Scott, the architectural historian I'd been dating for the past few months. He was kind, intelligent, and refreshingly straightforward. Qualities I now recognized as essential rather than optional. Dinner still on for tonight? Made reservations at that new place you mentioned. I smiled, texting back a confirmation before returning to my thoughts. The revenge at Barbara's birthday party had been satisfying, I couldn't deny that. Seeing her perfectly orchestrated life crumble as mine had was a form of justice. But the true victory wasn't in Barbara's downfall. It was in my own resurrection. I had learned to trust my instincts again, to recognize red flags I had previously ignored in my desire to make things work. I had rediscovered my worth outside of others' validation. Most importantly, I had learned that sometimes losing what you thought you wanted opens the door to what you truly need. My intercom buzzed. Ms. Reynolds, your 2:00 appointment is here. Send them in, I replied, shifting back into professional mode. As I greeted the potential client, I realized with sudden clarity that I no longer thought about the Stewarts daily. Barbara, Daniel, even the revenge that had once consumed my planning, they had faded into background characters in my story rather than defining forces. The true revenge hadn't been the public humiliation at the birthday party. It had been reclaiming my power, rebuilding my life, and moving forward rather than remaining trapped in bitterness. That evening, over dinner with Scott, I found myself laughing freely, engaged in conversation about architecture and travel and books, topics that interested us both, with no underlying power dynamics or hidden agendas. "You seem especially happy tonight," he observed, reaching across the table to take my hand. "I am," I replied, realizing the truth of it as I spoke. "I had a visit from my former father-in-law today. It made me realize how far I've come." "In what way?" he asked, genuinely interested. I considered the question. "I think I finally feel free. Not just from my marriage or the Stewarts, but from the need for their approval or the desire to prove him wrong. I'm living my life for me now." "To freedom," Scott said, raising his glass. "And to unexpected journeys," I added, echoing the toast I'd shared with Jenna a year earlier. Later that night, as I prepared for bed, I caught sight of my grandmother's pearl earrings in their dish on my dresser. I touched them gently, remembering the woman who had worn them, strong, resilient, authentic to her core. Qualities I had rediscovered in myself through the crucible of loss and recovery. Barbara Stewart had gifted me divorce papers, thinking it would destroy me. Instead, it had forced me to rebuild myself, stronger and wiser than before. The revenge at her birthday party had been satisfying, but the true victory was the life I had created from the ashes, a life that was authentically, unapologetically mine. As I drifted toward sleep, I realized I had finally reached the point of forgiveness, not for Barbara's sake, but for my own. Holding on to anger and resentment only kept me tethered to the past. True freedom meant releasing those bonds and focusing on the future I was building day by day. In the end, the best revenge wasn't serving Barbara a taste of her own medicine at her birthday party. It was living well, leading with integrity, and finding joy in a life she had never believed I deserved. A life that, as it turned out, was better than anything I could have imagined while trying to fit into the Stewart family mold. Have you ever experienced betrayal that ultimately led to something better in your life? Share your story in the comments below. Sometimes our greatest challenges lead to unexpected blessings. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life journeys of resilience and transformation. Remember, sometimes the end of one chapter is just the beginning of a better story. Thank you for listening, and may you find strength in your own challenges.